Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and today we are opening episode 2 of Authentic Alchemy. And we are going to be talking about the reality of burnout that we are all facing right now.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this subject. Not that it's an exciting topic, but that it's one that I think is heavily needed in this time right now. How many of us are struggling with burnout in this time right now?
No, I am, for sure.
It's a crazy time, and the hustle and bustle of the holiday season obviously does not help matters, and just everything that's going on in the world right now. Sarah, my gosh,
Yeah.
there's always something happening that feels
Yes.
major, right?
Mhm.
I've had so many conversations with different friends who, who feel overwhelmed by just a lot of the stuff that we're seeing and hearing, and like the feeling of not knowing what to do or not knowing how to be of support. And it's really interesting because what I'm finding for myself is that the only place that we can have the most impact is like right here, you know, and how we regulate our own nervous systems, right?
Yes.
And so burnout, I would love to dive into like what exactly is burnout,
Mhm.
and where does it come from, and why does it feel so overwhelming, and how do we manage and process, you know burnout and overwhelm,
Yeah.
and find our way back to getting grounded.
Right.
So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes. Awesome.
So what exactly is burnout, Sarah? How would you define it?
I would say burnout is a prolonged overworking yourself
Yeah.
or a prolonged experience of feeling an intense emotion that then leads to essentially a low grade depression, a kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't change or impact no matter how many hours of sleep or how much sleep we're getting. And often when we're experiencing burnout, we don't sleep as well. We don't sleep as deeply because our systems are so stressed.
Right.
We can also experience a loss of interest with burnout, low motivation. We can have low energy, trouble socializing with other people, and really experience compassion fatigue and numbing. We can numb to our emotions, we can numb to our experiences, and we typically numb to the experiences and emotions of the people around us as well.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, all of these events that are constantly happening and all of them feel so big.
Yeah.
Yes, we're reacting to that on a nervous system level, biologically feeling unsafe, where there feels like threats in the world and there's danger. And yet we've also become systematically numb to so many things too. And it's like, oh, another school shooting, right? Oh,
Right.
wow, that's unfortunate. And then we go on to the next story. And we
Right.
don't actually process the depth of what that news line is really processing or, expressing to us.
Right. Yeah. What the situation is really calling for.
Mhm.
And it's hard to understand what things are calling for when they feel like such big subjects, or such like complicated issues,
Topics, yeah.
topics in the world, right? And I'm uncovering like how much of that is about perfection, right? Like needing to have the answer, needing to
Mhm.
know the solution, or the need of others to get on board with what we think the solution is.
Yeah.
And rather, it's like all like the only focus that I'm finding is like, how can I be at cause for myself in
Mhm.
this situation, right? Like how am I showing up in the world? How am I showing up for myself? Because we're each a mirror. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like what are you noticing with that?
Yeah, I think events in the world can cause us to be very reactive.
Hmm.
And it's important for us to slow down and really check in. And we we can be reactive in the sense of like, we start talking about like, well, what happened and what went wrong and who was supposed to do what and who dropped the ball and what's going to happen next. And we start going in the mind, right?
Right. Yeah.
We
Spiraling. Yeah.
disconnect from the heart. We disconnect from the body.
Yeah.
And we start trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot of times where we go wrong, that we don't slow down and actually allow ourselves to feel the fullness of the grief of more lives lost, more tragedy in the world, more suffering that is unnecessary, so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And taking time to just allow ourselves to actually feel the fullness of that pain. Because it's from that place that we can start to keep our hearts open and find solutions and just be with each other.
Right. Right. Yeah. I find that, you know, when it comes to healing, when it comes to like just navigating, you know, things that are coming up, so often we can be in our head about things and trying to find solutions there, but the solution, as I'm understanding, what I'm learning is like, it's not found here. Like healing doesn't happen here. It happens in community is something that one of my mentors always says. And I'm just learning more and more the importance of community, especially when it comes to burnout.
Yes, because we need to be able to support each other, and no one person can do that for us. We need more than one person in our life. And we also want to keep in mind that when we experience pain, we do so in relation to another person.
Yeah.
Or an animal, right? Like we lose our pet, right? There's a relationship.
Yeah.
And so there's pain.
Yeah.
We also need to then heal in relationship to share our experiences. Because if a child experiences something and nobody ever comes to tell them that that was wrong and that they shouldn't have experienced that, then they don't know. And they normalize it and they try to make sense of it. It takes another person being able to reflect back to us our pain, our suffering, notice it, acknowledge it, make space for it, show compassion and understanding for it, in order for us to then have a healing experience, have a corrective experience.
Yeah. When it comes to burnout, like what are some of the symptoms or the characteristics that you can notice when having burnout? Like I was talking to a friend of mine and she was saying like, I don't know what it is. Like it feels like every person who comes to me with something, it just irritates me. Like it's like I find it like so irritating and I just feel like I just don't want to hear one more thing. Right? So like irritation and that edge is a sign of burnout.
Absolutely.
Exhaustion. But
being like quick to snap, not having motivation, not enjoying things much anymore.
Yeah.
So for me,
right? Yeah.
I know for me, one of the ways that burnout shows up is my lack. Like I don't want to cook. When I'm feeling burnt out, I'm like, I want the quickest, easiest meal that I can throw together. I don't want to put together a nourishing meal for myself. I don't want to take the time to do things like that.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy. And so that's one of the signs for me when I'm getting into that routine of like, okay, I'm just going to throw something together that's like, oh, I'm getting to that place of burnout. Check in with myself and see what needs to change or shift in order for me to get back to feeling better.
Yeah, the moment our self-care routines start to slip, right? We're in burnout. Now, isn't it interesting that the first thing to go when burnout happens is self-care?
Yeah. Like we have so much on our plate also. That's really what's adding to burnout. We are like feeling like our energy is being pulled in so many different directions. And so we try to minimize.
Right.
We try to take as much off of our plate as possible to.
Right. But we always start with ourselves first.
Yes.
Rather than, all the other things.
Yes.
I find that really, really interesting,
Mhm. And
how,
it's the
yeah,
opposite of what needs to take place. It's kind of
exactly,
like the messages of being on the airplane when they tell you to put your oxygen mask on yourself first.
exactly. Yeah.
We don't do that with self-care. And it's so, so important. Something I tell my clients all the time is if we're pouring into a drum that has a hole in the bottom and we're constantly just giving to everybody else whatever gets poured in there, we're never going to be full. It's always going to be empty.
Yes.
If we plug that hole and we allow the drum to fill up, then what's going to happen is eventually it's going to overflow
Hmm.
and there's going to be more and it's going to be spilling out over the place.
Hmm.
And that is where we want to give from, the place of overflow. We want
Right.
to be so filled with love, compassion within ourselves
Hmm.
that that's what spills out of us
Right.
in our interactions with other people.
It's, yeah. Um, it's getting to that point, right? Or removing the limiting beliefs that say that it's not okay to have your cup full, right?
Mhm.
Like we can know that our cup should be full, but it's one thing to I guess cognitively understand that, and another one to integrate it into actually knowing,
Mhm.
that you should be filling your cup first, because only from that place
Yeah.
can you really give, can you really show up.
Yeah. And I know for myself, there was part of me that identified with
Mhm.
being the exhausted empath who was always burnt out because then people saw me that way and they stopped coming to me for problems. And so it was actually
Interesting.
helpful. And it was a way I was trying to get my needs met
Right.
by being exhausted and
Hmm.
burnt out all the time. Oh, I can't handle your problems. I'm so burnt out.
Right. Right.
It was me trying to get my needs met instead of
Sorry.
just dealing with the
Yeah.
burnout. And once I
Right.
did that, it's like now I can generally handle almost everything that people throw at me
Hmm.
without ever getting burnt out anymore.
Hmm.
Granted, I'm still human, and so I have personal things in my life that can burn me out, and professionally, of course. But recognizing those signs for ourselves.
Right. um I find in what you're talking about, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like that you can take that on as your identity, as a way to armor up, you know
Mhm.
as a way to armor and create the boundary needed. But what's really being asked for when overwhelm comes up is like being honest about where you're at, like speaking the
Mhm.
truth,
Yeah.
right? Creating the boundary. And it's interesting. We've had this conversation about boundary, and what a boundary is.
Mhm.
And I'm learning so much that boundaries are about expressing truth, like speaking truth at every turn.
Yeah.
Um, but how can a person start taking a step towards, you know, creating healthy boundaries for themselves, right? Being able to speak their truth,
Mhm.
um, and let go of the armor of needing to take on that identity of always being burnt out and overwhelmed. Because some of that can also be a little bit martyry, right? Like it can be a little
Oh,
bit about
sure.
the martyr syndrome, like look at
Yes.
all that I do, right?
And that was true for me. Absolutely. I was playing out
Yeah,
that archetype
yeah,
because I wanted, people to notice how much I was doing for them all the time, right? Look how great I am, right?
right.
Yeah, we have to be real with those parts of ourselves, and we all have them.
Yeah.
And so it's being gentle. For one, being gentle with ourselves and being curious with ourselves, not coming at these places and parts with judgment of where am I bad and where can I catch myself being bad, but where am I over identifying with things that actually are harmful to me or that get in the way of my happiness
Hmm.
or get in the way of authentic connection with other people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Journaling is a great way to explore some of those questions
Right. And
and ask
movement.
friends too.
Right.
How do you feel about my boundaries? Like doing a boundary check in with your friends. Hey, let's sit down and talk about our boundaries together. And how do you feel my boundaries are? And how do you feel I do with setting boundaries with you? And I want to tell you, like, this is where I think you do really well with setting boundaries. And this is where I notice that you resent me sometimes because you don't set a boundary with me. And I want to stop doing that.
Right. Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we can tell when we're stepping our friends' boundaries and we're like, well, are they gonna say anything to us about it? Right?
So true. Yeah. Or even just letting a friend know, like, hey, I want to work on boundaries. And
Yes.
like, can I practice with you on those
And
boundaries?
with safe people and safe spaces.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Learning the power of no is a huge one if you're someone who relies on yes a lot, and learning the power of yes if you're someone who relies on no a lot, right?
Yes. Yes. And there are genuine reasons that we want to say yes sometimes.
Right.
And there are also really important reasons to honor our no.
Yes. Yes. Especially if feeling drained, exhausted, burnt out. Like, it's
Yes.
okay to say no. It's okay to fill your
Mhm.
cup. So
And it's
let's
okay
talk.
to even come back. Like I just make this point of like we
Yeah.
can make plans and we can say yes to things, and then we can realize like actually it is going to be too much, and
Right.
I can come back and do something else. To know that even if we make a decision in the moment, we don't have to hold ourselves to that, and it's
Right.
okay to change our minds.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about compassion fatigue.
Mhm.
Can you explain what that is first off?
Yes. So compassion fatigue is essentially the inability to feel compassion anymore
Mhm,
because you are so numb and exhausted
mhm.
from giving.
Yes.
So this is a big problem for empaths. I know I definitely felt this before I went to grad school. And as soon as I started understanding these things, it was like, oh, I've got to make different decisions so that by the time I'm ready to be a therapist, I can do things differently. And I'm not going to be in a compassion fatigue sort of place.
Right.
I think it's really normal to be experiencing compassion fatigue right now, being a
Okay.
human alive in the world.
Yeah.
There's a great quote by Eric Fromm, and it goes, one cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often.
Mm,
When we are heart centered beings, we are going to feel sadness often in the world because we're going to witness pain and suffering, and we're going to respond
mhm,
to that as we should.
mhm,
As much as we don't want to feel pain, pain is also a beautiful gift
mhm.
that allows us to know when our boundaries are being crossed, when something wrong is taking place, when something that requires our action is happening.
Yeah, and being able to feel your own pain, right? Like, to answer that first, because sometimes our trauma gets triggered by the trauma that's happening externally, and it can be bringing up certain things internally for you where you are.
Mhm. Right.
And yet there's this feeling of like, well, I got to show up and I got to do and I got to be and I got to for
Mhm.
everyone else. But the reality is that what the moment might be calling is for you to sit with your own pain, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. What you're referring to is vicarious trauma, where
yeah.
we can experience trauma by witnessing other people's trauma. And this is very much true with what we see on the news with gun violence and witnessing acts of violence against people of color, right? It's trauma to our system. Our body responds with trauma. It
Mhm,
reads the situation as trauma, and our body experiences threat
mhm,
along with that.
mhm.
And so it's important to honor that and not just like swipe, past that and
Yeah,
pretend it's not true.
yeah. And to let go of the guilt, right? Because when it comes to compassion fatigue, I think a lot of people start then harboring a lot of guilt,
Mhm.
right? Or even some shame that they can't show up, or that they are not feeling caring, or they're not feeling in their heart, or
Mhm.
it's really hard to feel for someone who's going through something painful. And it's like, how can you allow yourself the grace that you don't it's okay to be where you are right now.
Yeah.
um and to start filling your cup. Would you say that, Sarah?
Yeah, I would say recognizing that our sadness and our pain is a reflection of our love.
Mm,
So the depth of our pain is the reflection of the depth of our love.
mm,
It's the mirror of that.
mhm,
And so not seeing our pain as bad, making space for it, giving it time. I recommend clients, people, if you're feeling in a lot of pain and it's distracting you,
mhm,
make space for it. Set an alarm, set a timer on your phone for 10 to 15 minutes.
mhm,
And in that 10 to 15 minutes, allow yourself to feel all the pain.
mhm,
Really just feel the depth of it in your body, in your heart, in your mind. Allow yourself to cry if you need to. Allow yourself to fall apart if you need to and break down. Give yourself that 10 to 15 minutes.
mhm,
And then when that alarm goes off, getting up from where you're sitting, moving your body, generally shaking it out, shaking it off, moving that stagnant energy, and then doing something that you love, doing something that does fill you up. It might be sitting in the sun for 15 to 20 minutes, just with your eyes closed and just really feeling the sun on your skin. It might be going for a walk and getting some fresh air.
mhm.
It might be reaching out to a friend or a loved one for support and letting them know how you're feeling and checking in with them. How are they feeling? Are they feeling similarly? It might be taking a hot bath and just having a moment, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes me think of like creating a list of like who your bucket people are, like who fills your bucket,
Mhm.
and as well as like what sort of activities or whatever that bring you or help to elevate your energy, right? Having that
Yes.
as a resource to go to when you find yourself in burnout and overwhelm, right?
Absolutely. I actually have a dry erase board where in my office where I'm sitting, and it has like who's part of my crew right
Yeah,
on it. All of the people that I can like call and count on when I'm having a rough day.
yeah,
And it's important to know that and to know what person we can go to for different things. Like there are friends that I can go to about like financial stuff and like how do you do this and how do you budget that I
yeah,
wouldn't go to with for other friends and like no judgment on them. You
yes,
know, there are friends that I would go to for like a laugh and to like, you know, tell them a silly story. And so it's important to know like who are your people for different things. And so you also know like if one person is having a rough time, okay, like maybe I can't rely on them as much right now.
hmm,
They need me a little bit more, but I also need somebody and I can rely on this person right now. And then like vice versa when we're in different places and our friends.
yeah, I love that.
And then another thing that's really helpful is kind of creating a hierarchy of like red, green, you know, a red, yellow, green. So like
Mm,
being like the self-care that's like when the world is on fire and you're in that burnt out place and you're exhausted,
uh-huh.
what does self-care look like at that level for you versus what does self-care look like when things are going really well in life and you have plenty of time to take care of yourself and plenty of energy and support in your life? It's different. So knowing what those different levels are for yourself.
Oh, interesting. So so you're saying the level of the burnout that you're experiencing
Mhm.
and to know what kind of resources are helpful
At
for
each kind of level.
for that scenario.
Yes. So kind of thinking of it like, do you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah.
Kind of thinking of it like that, of like, what are the most important needs that we need to tend to when we are at that burnt out place? Typically, it's going to be simple: sleep,
Hmm,
nutrition, and like movement of our body, like care of our body.
hmm,
When we're at that really bad, super burnt out place,
hmm,
those are the three priorities. So self care there is going to be like eating nourishing meals, coming back to the basics there and letting things just be simple and easy.
yeah.
It might be, you know, like letting laundry pile up for a little bit because that's not a priority of self care. Maybe
Right.
that's tier two self care when we're feeling a little bit better.
Right. asking somebody else, if there's other people in the household, to take over certain things for you,
Yes.
being able to ask for what you want and what you need, right, in those moments. It's really interesting too that it can feel so hard to ask for help, right? And what's funny is like you'll know, like I think most of us know, and those of you who are listening, like you might be like, I want my people to come ask me for help. Like I'm open, I'm here to support, like please ask for help,
Mhm.
right? And yet when it comes to you personally having, struggling with being able to ask for help. And, I one of the things that I've started doing is just like for the people, who are bucket people, is to say like, I know I have a hard time asking for help, and I want to hold myself at cause for that. And so I want to make sure that I can come to you if I'm in a situation, right? Just to put it out there, because I can help
Absolutely.
to receive like confirmation, like please ask me for help, please reach out
Yes.
to me, please use me as a support, right? I'm here,
Mhm.
I really am here. um but yeah, and also like there can be a story though, even on top of that, right, that we
Definitely.
carry um
Mhm.
on what it is to ask for help.
Yeah.
How can we like let go of that story?
Well, I think part of it is realizing, like you said, that we want our friends to come to us for help.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'll always tell my friends, because I know the nature of my job, and there's aspects of that that can be challenging or draining in
Yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
so one thing I tell them in family too, come to me, always come and ask. And if I can't, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But let me have the decision, and don't make the decision for me by assuming that I'm not going to be able to help or that I'm not going to want to help.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And so I think that's a big piece, is like letting all of us have our own decision and freedom to make choices, and respecting that we can each make choices that are good for us when we are with people who are safe and honor us and understand us.
Mhm.
And it's important to surround ourselves with those kind of people so that we know when we are burnt out, it is okay to ask for help and that there isn't going to be judgment there.
Mhm. Exactly.
And it makes people genuinely feel good when we actually give them the keys to helping us, and then they can unlock the door and come in and actually be there for us. Because, like you mentioned in the beginning of this, like we don't always know what to do when people are burnt out. And
Yeah.
that can be really challenging. And honestly, it's just holding space for each other and checking in and letting each other know that we love each other and we're there.
Yeah. The bridging of community, or the building of connection with others.
Mhm.
And that's something too that I'm recognizing with, with us having gone through COVID.
Yeah.
And we're in this time where there's been a lot of barriers of, connection around
Mhm.
connection. And yet there is a longing for it as well.
Yeah.
And um, it's it's this interesting dance with what it is to have support,
Mhm.
to ask for support, and to build connection. Um, and burnout does make that difficult, because everybody is experiencing burnouts like
Mhm.
similarly in their own lives.
Yeah.
um, and connection doesn't happen, so it's like doesn't have the level of ease that I think it had before this past couple of years, right? It
Yeah,
almost
the lightheartedness isn't there. There's more
yeah,
heaviness in our interactions with each other right now. And
yeah,
there's more uncertainty in our interactions with each other right now,
right.
because there is more tension in the world, because there is more fear of each other right now, just biologically, of like, are you sick and are you going to get me sick? Right? Like at an unconscious level, there's that going on.
Yeah,
No matter how conscious we are or how unafraid we are of getting sick or whatever those thoughts might be, they're
yeah,
still going to be that biological level there.
Yes.
But I think community is so crucial. And that's what I've seen really the difference between the people who are getting burnt out and bouncing back and having that resiliency versus the people who are getting burnt out and staying burnt out is community. The people who have support, who have good communities, who have people in their crew that they can turn to and rely on, and then people who don't because of many reasons, right? They've lost people, transitions. They are so burnt out. And so then they don't have the energy to, there's shifting social circles in our healing patterns and paths. So that makes it challenging as well. So there are a lot of, roadblocks that get in the way of connecting to a meaningful community. But it's really important to continue to persevere and continue to find our community and not give up on that. Because especially in the next decade, I cannot stress this enough. Our community is going to be crucial for the success of our species. Our community is going to mean everything for whether or not we survive. And I don't say that lightly. We have to be able to rely on each other and love each other and forgive each other and show up for each other. It's going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy, but it is necessary. Right. So needed. Yeah. Start tapping in and tuning into who your people are, and allowing yourself the permission, to really lean on your support systems. And if you don't have one, it's about developing a support system that's going to be there for you, that right?
And let go of people who are not supporting you.
Oh, yes.
If you set a boundary and somebody makes you feel bad, if you set a boundary and it burns a bridge, walk away. It wasn't your person. It's not your people. Your people are not going to ask you to sacrifice yourself. They're not going to ask you to compromise yourself and shrink yourself. So if that's continuing to come up in your life, it's important to let those people go.
Yeah. And also, if you have people in your life who are kind of like vampires, right? Who drain you of a lot of energy as well.
Right. We end up feeling much more exhausted.
Exactly.
Those kinds of people in our lives.
Yes.
Than we do building community with ourselves and other people, new people.
Yeah. And that's hard too, when so often that can be family, right? Like family who's draining a lot of our energy. And it's again, how do you allow yourself to speak truth and to set those boundaries to honor your own energy?
Yeah.
Right?
I think one thing is we are having a lot more conversations about boundaries as a society.
Yeah, we are.
So people and millennials are setting boundaries, and they're not doing it in a way that's dramatic and that we have to have a big fight, blow out with each other about it.
It's pretty direct.
Okay, I understood and respect there. And so I think there's actually a lot of education taking place for older generations around what healthy relationships and attachments look like for the first time, because this isn't judgment, but a lot of older generations do have much more emotional enmeshment with each other because we didn't understand boundaries as well as we do now. And so we did have much more burnout in our relationships because everybody was just so enmeshed with each other and feeding off of each other burnout all the time.
Interesting. That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. Things are shifting, which is great.
It's getting better.
It's getting better. Sarah, is there anything else on burnout that we should talk about before we close out tonight?
I'm sure there is. I think grounding yourself is really important for burnout. Focusing on all the blessings that you do have, the things that you have to be grateful for. Exactly. Remembering that in hardships, we still have so much to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
We still have so much abundance in the world. I mean, my goodness, going to the grocery store and just walking around the aisles, like we have so much choice. We have
Right.
everything at our fingertips.
If we don't have something to compare it to, because I think that's a lot has to do with privilege, that we don't understand how abundant we really are. Yeah.
Yes, how privileged we truly, truly are. And there are so many other people in the world, in other countries, who do not have those same privileges.
Yeah, right. Completely.
So,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
the grounding, and how do we so I would like to talk a little bit about the grounding, because
mhm,
the grounding aspect. So for me, one of the things I do is I get outside,
mhm,
and I mean, winter is coming, but if you can get outside and get your feet on the earth, that
mhm,
really helps you feel grounded. Or get
yes.
your arms around a tree. That's also really great around
Mhm,
grounding.
yep,
And selenite is a mineral or crystal that I use for
mhm,
grounding as well. What else, Sarah, can
absolutely.
help with grounding?
I love amethyst as a crystal since we're talking about that one.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good
Um, for burnout, rose quartz is a good one because it's a heart opener. So it helps us get that heart open again
one.
to feeling and loving ourselves, the people
Mhm.
around us. Um, Gardening or playing with our indoor plants, connecting
Mm,
with plants that way when we're in the winter and we can't like necessarily go lay outside in the sun.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Mhm. Or even just like pulling up a chair in front of a window and sitting in front of a window inside and allowing ourselves to feel the sun on our skin.
Sun. Oh gosh, I love to get outside and go for a walk in the sun. Yeah,
Yeah, it can be
that's
really good actually to just like get bundled up and go out in the cold
yes.
too.
In
Like
the
it's really
cold.
good for our immune systems.
Yeah, I do it all the time now. That used to not be me a couple of years ago. It'd be like, it's cold outside. Why would you go out in that? Now, just go out, and it's rejuvenating for sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yes.
So, breath work is
Mhm.
another, way to get grounded and to help get centered. And so, even if it's just like taking, 2 minutes out of your day to just
Mhm.
do some, I call the box breaths, 4 breaths in, hold, 4 seconds out, hold, breathe in,
Yep.
um, that box breathing is really good for helping to regulate the nervous system.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, we always want to make sure that when we're doing breathing exercises and activities or any coping technique or skill, we want to make sure we're doing it for more than 60 seconds.
Yes.
60 seconds is how long it takes for our relaxation response to activate. There's a little bit of a delayed response for biological reasons of keeping us safe. We want to trust that there's safety for a whole minute before we're like, okay, I can actually relax.
Oh, interesting. So
Mhm.
at least 1 minute is
At least, yeah.
at least. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good to know. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's our vagus nerve is part of that relaxation response in our parasympathetic nervous system,
Uh-huh.
and that actually runs all along our spine, the back of our throat. And so one of the best ways that we can also activate that is by singing or humming, because what that does is it vibrates our vocal cords, which
Hmm.
pushes on and applies pressure to that vagus nerve, that relaxation response,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like a button that turns it on.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yes.
So yeah, some great techniques or resources to put in your toolbox if you're dealing with overwhelm or burnout right now.
Mhm.
Anything else, Sarah? I think
I think
that's
that's it. I know, and I just want to normalize that it's really okay to experience burnout, that we do for different reasons. And right now, in particular, we are in winter. It's, a dark period of time. We do have less sunlight. So we're going to have less vitamin D, which is going to make us also feel a little bit more tired and run down right now naturally. So just
mhm.
have grace for yourself and knowing that you are human, you're going to experience these lows as a human. There isn't anything wrong with you.
Yes. And I want to say it's it's almost unavoidable. I mean, unless you're like a practicing monk who is like ascended in some way, it's you
Yeah,
really cannot avoid burnout. It's just
absolutely.
exactly part of the human experience, and
Mhm.
it's about how we can our resiliency from burnout. We can be more and more resilient the more we really put these techniques into practice, right? And including
Yes,
community. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Wow, was a great conversation, Sarah. And for those of
Great.
you listening, share this video with someone who is maybe experiencing burnout and could use some resources or just a message, right, to let them know that they're not alone in what they're experiencing and that there are solutions to help with burnout. And then, put some of these things in practice. Like, think about one thing you could take from our conversation today that you can put into practice right now, to start supporting yourself,
Yes.
supporting your body, supporting your nervous system, because the more stable and steady we can be in our own lives, like that just helps to create like a ripple effect, right, Sarah? Like it helps to
Absolutely.
create stabilization, safety, and security in our environment. So
Mhm.
it starts with you first.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
That is the most powerful thing that we can do is just really applying our energy within and making sure that we are doing good inward, and that will automatically reflect outward into the world.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. We are mirrors reflecting in
Yes.
so many ways. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight, and we will see you on the next episode of Authentic Alchemy. And have a great rest of your week. Talk to you soon. Much love.
Yes.
Bye.